Okay, listen up. This episode of the Omni-Bestiary contains content that may not be palatable to certain viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Crunchy berry. Welcome to another entry from the Omni-Bestiary. Today's specimen is a creature native to planet PNF-404, a world where nature reigns supreme, and where the native wildlife has developed into some rather drastic forms. Should you ever find yourself in this land, either for business reasons or because of an involuntary landing, it is paramount for your survival that you familiarize yourself with the idiosyncrasies of the most widespread predator on this planet, the Bulborb. Bulborbs are animals that encompasses members of the Oculus genus of the grub dog family. Bulborbs can be identified by their 2 legs, massive stalked eyes, and colossal mouth, which encompasses about half of their body. The most common type of Bulborb, the red Bulborb, has, in case of you're colorblind, a red back with white spots, which helps it blend in with nearby toadstools. Other notable Bulborb species include the hairy Bulborb, which has an additional coat of fur to keep itself warm, the high-strung orange Bulborb, and the whip-tongued Bulborb, whose pointed snout conceals an elongated tongue that snatches up prey, much like how the mucousy tongues of anteaters entangle insects. If you encounter a Bulborb, chances are you'd see you sleeping by a group of smaller ones. You would be forgiven for assuming that they are its children, but this may not be the case. In fact, those smaller Bulborbs are likely a different species, that is part of a completely separate genetic lineage, the breadbug family. These dwarf Bulborbs have adopted the coloration and anatomy of their true Bulborb counterparts, to scare away threats by tricking them into thinking that they are the genuine article. The fact that the true Bulborb doesn't mind commingling with them also helps here. Copying the physical traits of another animal is a common sight in nature, one that we in the scientific community call mimicry. Mimicry is where an animal develops similar characteristics to another organism, which grants a multitude of advantages. For example, some animals share the patterns and colors of unpalatable or poisonous ones to avoid being eaten. Alternatively, predators might pose as another animal to deceive prey, like with the zone-tailed hawk, which copy the flight patterns and plumage of the harmless turkey vulture. The specific type of mimicry exhibited by the dwarf Bulborbs appears to be Wasmannian mimicry, where an animal not only copies the traits of another, it is able to coexist and live with them. Certain spider and wasp species are known to pull this off when living amongst ant colonies, by adopting an ant-like shape, and by secreting chemicals similar to those of ant pheromones. In some animals, it can be hard to tell the mimic apart from the mimicee, though fortunately it's easy to tell what is and what isn't a true Bulborb. The big ones are the members of the Oculus genus, while the little ones are mimics from the Pansaurus genus. With the exception of the fiery dwarf Bulblax, which is labeled as a member of the Oculus genus like its larger counterpart, despite it being explicitly stated that it's a bread bug, not a grub dog. Same thing for the tough and aggressive ballbearers, though these guys are the one exception to everything I just said, as the smaller ballbearers are actually the true offspring of the large ones. However, for some reason, the adult ballbearers are labeled as a subspecies of the small ones, not as the exact same species, which also happened to the Empress Bulblax, whose offspring are classified as a different species from the mother, despite them clearly coming out of her abdomen! Ah! Someone fix this dichotomy! Most Bulborbs are nocturnal, and are thus more active at night. During the day, they either sleep outside or rest in caves. Most of their time at night is spent searching for prey, which typically consists of the anthropomorphic plant creatures known as Pikmin. or Smash Bros. Noobs. Bulborbs need to exercise caution when going after Pikmin though, as they can turn the tables on them when working in a coordinated group, typically by going after their vulnerable backsides or eye stalks. However, this is not the only reason why the Bulborbs need to watch out for Pikmin, for one variety of them is known to affect the bodies of both dwarf and true Bulborbs. These Bulbmen are parasites that attack Bulborbs nesting underground by burrowing themselves inside the Bulborb's spine, leaving only their trademark sprout exposed to the world. Once inside, they fuse with the Bulborb's nervous system and gain complete control over its motor functions, essentially turning it into a glorified vehicle. Juvenile Bulbmen reside in a dwarf Bulborb and follow an adult leader, which typically inhabits the body of a true Bulborb, until they grow up and find a larger specimen to assimilate with. As macabre as all this sounds, there do exist parasites in your world that act similarly to the Bulbmen. Several helminths, or invertebrate parasites, have the capacity to alter the behavior of their hosts. For example, the green-banded broodsac is a flatworm that embeds itself in the eye stalks of snails to influence their movement. And Myrmeconema neotropicum is a nematode that turns the abdomens of ants red and forces them to raise them in the air. These snails and ants are also what are known as intermediate hosts, as like with the juvenile Bulbmen, these parasites inhabit these hosts before transferring to a different one. However, they differ in how this relocation occurs. While the Bulbmen seem to simply remove themselves and enter another Bulborb, these helminths alter their host behavior for the sole purpose of being eaten by a predator, so they may infect the unwitting hunter. The broodsac places the snails out in the open and adopts what appears reminiscent of a caterpillar, and the ant's rennet abdomen is made to resemble a piece of fruit, both of which serve to attract birds. While we're on this topic, I would be remiss if I talked about behavior-modifying organisms and never mentioned the infamous cordyceps fungus. Cordyceps, much like the Bulbmen, grows inside insects and takes over their neurological processes. Assuming control over the insect permits the fungus to take it to places suitable for spreading its spores, such as high places or near other insects. Yes, I can understand that all this may seem horrifying, but do take solace in the fact that none of these can influence humans. At least not yet. At the start of this video, I may have given you the impression that the Bulborb is a threat to extraterrestrial explorers. And yes, this is still absolutely true, if you're a Hokotation or a Kopite. But for beings like you and me, this specimen wouldn't be quite as imposing. This is because the Bulborb is only a couple centimeters tall, compared to the known size of an average Pikmin, of which we could use to calculate the Bulborb's exact height. Knowing that the Pikmin are typically 2.9 centimeters tall, we could compare the Pikmin to the Bulborb in this picture and calculate its height. Doing so indicates that the Bulborb is around 10.15 centimeters tall, 13.05 centimeters if we include the eye stalks. This makes the Bulborb the size equivalent of your typical wallet. Now that we know how big your typical Bulborb is, it's only natural that we try to figure out the size of the largest Bulborb species, the monstrous Emperor Bulblax, a gluttonous creature that ambushes prey by disguising itself as a mossy rock, and kills them either by slurping them with his colossal tongue, or by crushing them under its sheer weight. Comparing a Pikmin to the largest known Bulblax specimen in this footage here, shows that it has a height of 21.75 centimeters. This means that the terrifying and beastly Emperor Bulblax can be the same size as a mid-sized Chihuahua. Thus, we conclude today's entry. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, I invite you to like and subscribe, as well as view the previous episodes of my little series on my channel. I also have a Twitter account, so if you would like to get some, oh, God! Oh, God! Get him off! Get him off! Get him off! Ah!